Welcome everyone to Brazos and Beyond, the first official episode of Brazos and Beyond. Originally, I had planned to have the first episode center around the Huntsville Prison Museum. That's kind of hit a bit of a snag. No big deal. We'll get to it very, very soon. But in the meantime, what I would like to do is just take a few minutes and talk about something that is pretty much constantly on my mind. I'm always kind of thinking about it, and it's just something that it intrigues me. It is something that I think intrigues a lot of Texans, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding the entire concept that we're going to be talking about today. And we're just basically hitting the iceberg when it comes to, or the tip of the iceberg, I should say, when we talk about the subject at hand, and that is the growing Texit movement. I have in the past really touched on it just briefly in maybe one or two of the Lone Star Spirit series, which those videos are still available on YouTube, and I will put the link to that channel below. But I wanted to take just a little bit of time and talk about some of the things that I have learned about the Texit movement and some of the potential roadblocks that could present itself to those. And in full disclosure, I do feel it necessary to tell you that I am a member of the Texas nationalist movement. There's not really a group in my area for me to go and attend meetings or anything like that, but I do at least fundamentally agree with a lot of the things that the Texas nationalist movement has put forth. I can't say I agree with 100% of them. There's not many things I 100% agree with, other than God is God and He is the Almighty, and Christ is the Savior of the world, and He is the Messiah, and He is coming back soon. Other than that, just like my mother said, you can believe nothing that you hear and maybe half of what you see. And those words are full of wisdom, because we don't know up from down, especially when it comes to our federal government. But of course, that's going to be a discussion maybe never, or maybe for a later time. But it's something that, like I said, it is very intriguing to me, and I have just I like to mess around a little bit on Chat GPT, and just to kind of see what AI is saying about certain things. It's more for curiosity than anything else. I mean, I've caught it twice giving wrong information. One of them was very, very small. It listed King's X's second album as Faith, Hope, Love, and it was actually the third album. The second album is Gretchen Goes to Nebraska. And I actually corrected it, and it took a second, said, yes, you are correct. Gretchen Goes to Nebraska is the second album, not the third. So kind of a tiny win when it comes to that. And I know that, you know, Chat GPT or AI really is still, as far as being accessible from a consumer point of view, is very much in the infantile stage. So it's not going to be correct 100% of the time. It's still learning and all that other stuff. But I had we'll call it what it is, I had a conversation with Chat GPT about the Texit movement, and I will at least attempt to put transcripts or photos of the actual conversation I had with Chat GPT concerning this subject. But all things aside, I felt that the answers that I did receive from Chat GPT were something that would make you really think about what this Texit movement, or the Texas nationalist movement, is really about. And it broke it down basically into two separate categories. And I found this very, very interesting. And if you'll kind of indulge me for at least for a few minutes, I would like to kind of give you a little bit of a transcript of what that conversation was like. And just so you know, I'm not full of it. Hopefully you can see it. There it is on my phone, Chat GPT. And just to kind of as a precursor to this, to set this whole thing up, I basically asked the question, what are the chances that a Republic of Texas, say it separates from the United States, what are the chances that it could actually be successful and grow and be a world, player in the current geopolitical climate that we currently see? And it basically said that Texas has the 8th largest economy in the world. The economy of Texas is bigger than Canada, is bigger than Brazil. And on an economic standpoint, with the tech, the oil, the renewable energies, gas, and a lot of the companies that are currently operating out within Texas borders, it could be very successful on a economic type of stance. It started me going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and basically ChatGPT was saying that due to the United States Constitution, and the Constitution stating that the Union is indestructible, no state can leave other than through ratification. Two-thirds of the states, of the 50 states, would have to successfully petition for there to be an amendment added to the Constitution that says yes, Texas can go and be its own independent nation. And then after that, 3/4 of the states, so 38 of 50 states, would have to ratify it. So the chances of that happening, slim and none. And then really the only other way is for revolution, and that's considered illegal, or extra, what did it put it as, extra constitutional. Regardless, going down the rabbit hole, I got to the point where I asked, in your estimation, why has the push for Texas secession grown so much, especially over the past decade? and it stated that it has a lot more layers than most people would initially think. And it said the growth of Texas secessionist sentiment over the past decade comes from a mix of political, cultural, and economic forces, both inside Texas and at the national level. And it lists these areas. Number one being polarization and federal distrust. The U.S. has become increasingly divided politically. Well, that's an understatement. Rural versus urban, conservative versus progressive. And many Texans see federal policies on issues like gun rights, immigration, energy, and social values as out of step with Texas culture or Texas values. And that fuels the feeling that Texas would do it better on their own without any interference from the federal government in Washington, D.C. Second thing that it mentioned was immigration and border issues. If you have spent 15 seconds watching your local news, especially in the state of Texas, over the past probably 2 years, 2.5 years, probably even longer than that, I don't watch the news much. But it seems like for the longest time, immigration and the crisis at the border, especially during the previous administration, was front and center. It was at the heart of every newscast, whether that be Fox, ABC, CBS, NBC, you name it, they covered it. Newsmax, PBS probably did. I don't watch NPR, but everybody had something to say about it. And like I said, I don't watch the news anymore. The news is sensationalized. It's become more of a political statement or an ideological statement instead of just telling me what's going on, what the effects of it were, how it can be fixed, if it can be fixed, and move on to the next story. All right, I miss the days of Walter Cronkite. I just caught the tail end of his career. But the immigration and border issues is another reason that this Texit movement seems to be growing some steam. And under this heading, it said Texas shares the longest stretch of the U.S. border, or the border between the U.S. and Mexico. Federal struggles to manage immigration have intensified frustrations among Texans who feel they bear the brunt of the crisis. And that's not saying that the states of New Mexico, California, Arizona don't feel the impact of the border issue. However, since Texas does have the longest U.S.-Mexico border, it just feels like we get the brunt of it, which I agree with. It also stated that this has turned into a rallying point. If D.C., this is a quote, if D.C. won't secure the border, Texas should be sovereign and handle it ourselves, close quote. Third was economic identity and pride. Texas is the 8th largest economy. It's a global energy hub for oil, gas, and renewables. It has major industries in tech, agriculture, and trade. And that fuels the belief that Texas is self-sufficient and doesn't need Washington's support. And there is a belief that Texas actually sends more money to the federal government in Washington, D.C. than we actually get back from the government in aid and any kind of monies from the federal government. And in my research, I found that to be somewhat true, if not 100% true. Cultural distinctiveness was another item on the list. Texas was an independent republic from 1836 to 1845, and Texans take that history seriously, and that is not a joke. that is not hyperbole, it is true. We take that 1836 Texas Republic, Texas independence thing very, very seriously, and I can speak from the heart on that one. Texas exceptionalism is real. The flag, the Alamo, and the frontier identity all reinforce the idea that Texas is different from any other state. Now, you hit the nail right on the head with that one. And this is something that it kind of torqued me off a little bit when I read this. It said this mythology, it's not mythology. All those things happened. The Alamo happened, Gonzales happened, San Jacinto happened. Texas did gain its independence from Mexico. Texas was a republic for 9 years. What's mythological about that? But it says the mythology makes secession seem less far-fetched to Texans than, say, Iowans. And I believe there's just a couple more. Yeah, there's just 3 more. The 5th one was national politics as a catalyst. And I think this is a big one for a lot of people. The push tends to grow when Texans feel alienated from whoever is in the White House. Under Obama, anger focused on healthcare, gun control, and federal expansion. Under Trump, the movement cooled since many aligned with him. And under Biden, it surged again with grievances about energy policy, border control, and culture war issues. And you can see just from that it really does depend on who is in control, not only of the White House, but of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And the right side versus left side, conservative versus progressives, excuse me, has really become more of a hold my beer and watch this kind of thing between the two. One side will do something and the other side will, we gotta do better than that. For probably the past 15 to 20 years, I have firmly believed that both sides are leading us to the same end, the same goal that they have. Just one side is moving faster than the other. That's just my 2 cents on that. I haven't been proven wrong yet. All you have to do is look through the annals of history and see that both the Republican and the Democrat Party have changed, not subtly, radically, over we'll take it from even before Abraham Lincoln. In that short amount of time, it's like they have flip-flopped at least 1 or 2 times and had different stances. Free speech used to be the big thing of the Democrat Party. It doesn't seem that way anymore. Now the Republicans have picked that up. In the past, it seemed like the Republicans were the ones who wanted to censor free speech, censor music and things like that. And, you know, I hear a lot of musicians, especially one Corey Taylor. Sorry, I'm not a Slipknot fan. I'm not a Stone Sour fan. I think Corey Taylor is misinformed, to put it nicely. He basically said that the whole PMRC thing was a Republican, conservative, Puritarian type thing. And I'm like, Tipper Gore was the husband of Al Gore, who is a staunch Democrat. So you might want to do a little bit more research in your history there, Mr. Taylor. However, I digress. Social media and alternative media was another heading that it had. And groups like the Texas Nationalist Movement have used social platforms to spread their message more effectively than ever before. Viral memes, podcasts, and YouTube channels have amplified the idea that secession is not only desirable, but possible. Foreign disinformation campaigns, notably Russia-linked efforts, have also amplified separatist rhetoric online to deepen U.S. divisions. And the last one was frustration with federal spending and debt. The ballooning U.S. national debt, federal taxation, and bailout politics have given fuel to arguments that Texas would be financially better off independent. This connects with libertarian-minded Texans who emphasize small government and fiscal independence. Sorry about that. The Chat GPT then asked me, after all of that, said, do you want me to break down how much of this is symbolic protest versus genuine independence movement? And in parentheses it says, because for many supporters, Texit is really more about sending a message than actually leaving. Now, disclaimer here, I am not in any way, shape, form, or fashion trying to discourage or disparage or talk mess about the Texas nationalist movement, Texit, or anything like that. I'm just sharing to you what has been presented to me. So in response, I said, that sounds interesting, especially since I am a member of the Texas nationalist movement. The reply was, that's very interesting to know. Thank you for sharing that with me. Since you're a part of the Texas nationalist movement, you probably see firsthand how much of the Texit conversation is driven by people with very different motivations. From my outside perspective, it seems like the movement lives in two overlapping spaces. One being the symbolic protest, messaging power. For many Texans, talk of secession is less about literally leaving tomorrow and more about sending a warning to Washington, respect state sovereignty, or we'll take it further. Now, I will say that the 10th Amendment is there to protect states' rights. That's why you have certain states in the United States that have at least decriminalized or flat out made cannabis legal. And it's still at the federal level, it is still illegal. That's stupid, by the way. Another thing is channeling frustration with federal policies, immigration, energy, taxation, and culture. And that seems to be some recurring themes. Keeping Texas' identity alive, a way to celebrate independence, uniqueness, and history, and political leverage. Secession talk can pressure federal politicians to listen to Texas demands more seriously. And then, in contrast, you've got the genuine independence goal. And then that's on the complete other side of the spectrum. Then there's the true independence wing, which believes Texas can and should separate economic self-sufficiency, pointing to Texas GDP, energy dominance, agricultural, and ports. Government overreach, belief that only full sovereignty can protect Texans from federal intrusion. Border control and security, frustration that Texas is limited by federal immigration law, and political alienation, sense that D.C. will never represent Texas values regardless of who's in office. And it also goes into why both sides of that mindset, or that of the Texit movement, both sides, whether it be the actual secession goal or if it's a symbolic gesture, why they need each other. And it basically said here, the symbolic camp keeps the conversation mainstream and relatable. It draws in Texans who may not want full independence but sympathize with the frustrations. And the genuine independence camp gives the movement its vision and its edge, keeping pressure on lawmakers and pushing policy debates further. So And it goes, and then it starts talking about how outsiders see it, and I really don't care how outsiders see it. Instead of actually answering questions, it actually, which it did, but it also had me thinking about other questions. And the big one for me is this: if we have been a part of the United States government, and that in our form of government, which erroneously is being called a democracy, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, but our children are being brainwashed that we live in a democracy regardless. My fear, or my question is what is going to keep an independent Texas from following that same type of political climate, where you have your left-leaning, progressive, liberal policymakers and your conservative, Republican representatives or policymakers? We're still going to be clashing head to head. We have become so used to this type of political grandstanding and political environment that it's going to be very hard for, especially in the, if it does happen, especially in probably the first decade or longer, for Texans and the policymakers that we elect to get away from that form of government. And if it is it would be, I would imagine, a constitutional republic. What's going to keep us from following that same spiral down the drain type of mentality that our politicians currently have right now? Because that's basically what the country is doing. It's doing this around the drain. We're stuck in the whirlpool or the maelstrom, whatever you want to call it, and we're not that far from just going off the edge. And it's the policies of the federal government that have allowed a lot of these things to happen. But what's to stop that from happening with an independent Texas republic? It would take a concerted effort, not only from the politicians that are elected, but from the people who elect them, to hold those individuals to their assigned, make them fulfill their duties, what they promised you, what their platform was. If they said they were going to attempt to do this and they never do, we need to, as constituents, hold those individuals responsible. As a general rule, nobody in the United States really holds, or it's a very small minority of people who actually hold those elected individuals to the standard that that individual set themselves. A person's word doesn't mean jack squat anymore, especially if you're a politician. You're expected to lie, and we just go along with it. Texas has a lot of hurdles in front of it. The legality of Texas secession, and you can even look up I believe it's the Montevideo Convention of 1933 that defined what a state was. That seems to be a big portion of the Texas nationalist movement, the basis on what they're building this on. And I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. It is what it is. That seems to be at least part of the building block to this Texas movement. I'm not sure what Texas and Texans need to do. We, as a state, we cannot expect the rest of the nation just to fall in line with what our views are, what our values are, what our morals are. our ethics. We'll leave that to the idiots in California that believe that whatever California does, the rest, and that's not all Californians, but they feel that what California does, the rest of the country should do. And it could be, I'm sure there's people in every state that do that. There's people probably in Florida that if Florida does this, the rest of the nation should do it. I know for a fact that there's Texans that feel if Texas does this and it works, the rest of the nation should do it. We cannot impose our will on the rest of the nation. Because if you look at the grand scheme of things, Texas is the second largest state landmass wise, but we're in the grand scheme of things, our population just isn't big enough to warrant being a majority and imposing our will. Which, if it's majority rule, that's democracy, right? Yeah, and we're not a democracy. I mean, really, democracy is 5 wolves and 3 sheep trying to vote on what's for dinner. Who's going to win every time? The wolves. And who's going to be for dinner? The sheep. But this little bit of a conversation here really just it really just got my brain going a little bit more in depth. And at the same time, I am very curious, if you are a Texan, what your thoughts of Texas secession, Texas becoming a republic. Is secession a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Would it work? Even if you're outside of the state of Texas, let's say you're that amendment, that constitutional amendment comes up, would you support that constitutional amendment, or would you be against that constitutional amendment? So to include everyone who's watching both in state and watching out of state, what is your view on the Texit movement? I would just absolutely enjoy reading your comments on this. And if you have an answer and you want to share it, please place it in the comments below, because I'm very curious as to what people think, both inside the state and outside of the state. It's very interesting and intriguing subject to talk about. So there's the question for the day, is what are your personal views on the Texit movement? Give me your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, and I've said in the past, thank you very much for watching. If this is the first time you're seeing me on YouTube, you're brand new to Mind of Little Rage or TMOLR Texas or Lone Star Spirit, this is Brazos and Beyond. Brand new, first episode. We got 0.5, 0.75 that led up to this, but this is the first official episode. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing, all that great stuff that goes along with being on YouTube and Rumble for that matter. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Went a little longer than I expected it to, but sometimes I get a little long-winded. But very soon we're going to be going to the Huntsville Prison Museum, checking that place out. I'm very excited about that. And it won't be very long. I will be reaching out to the guys in Sincere, the band based out of Austin, to come and hopefully we'll be able to do at least a Zoom type interview and talk about their brand new album that's I believe it's already out. So I'm excited about having Sincere. And if you are an up and coming band, it doesn't matter what genre you are and you want to be featured on Brazos and Beyond, email is going to be in the description below. Please feel free to reach out if you'd like to be a guest, or if you'd like to do the from the banks section on these videos, please reach out, give me your contact information, and we'll get in touch with you, and we'll try to set something up for you, because I would love for the viewers to have a part in this show. So until next week, I'm Charles. This is Brazos and Beyond. We'll talk to you next week.